Welcome to MTG Evolving Wild. My name's Mark.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Cody.
And today we're joined by special guest of the show, Mr. Jake.
Hi.
Jake is he used to play a lot of Magic with us. These days he does a lot of our audio editing for the podcast. He's a huge help.
Huge round of applause, guys.
Huge round of I'm going to give him a little.
He's just slapping
slapping
random parts of our body to show our appreciation
Huge
for our
slap
friend
of
Jake.
our body for Jake.
Yeah,
right
now for real. I mean, Jake has been a really close friend of ours for years and years now, and we've been friends outside of Magic before we played Magic, and it was kind of exciting because we did get to start our journeys with you, and so I'm hoping we get to explore.
Why don't you say a little hello, Jake?
Hello. It is great to be here. Thank you. I've had your voices in my ears for dozens of hours at this point, I think, and we're only on season 2.
Plenty more hours to come, sir.
I'm gonna hate editing this because I have to listen to my own voice like on repeat. But I've been very excited to be here.
Yeah, man, we're so excited to have you. Like, I'm just like, I know you've been out of like actually playing Magic for a little while, but for you to be on here, for you to get some enjoyment listening to the pod and just like helping us work on it, and now being here, we're all like super hyped for it.
Well, thank you.
So I'm curious, before all this Magic the Gathering hullabaloo, where did you start with trading card games in general, or did you have a history before Magic the Gathering?
Never actually like trading or legitimately playing, but like definitely had little stints of collecting things. I remember I was probably like 8, and I was at some random thrift store with my mom, and there was, I forget if it was a binder or just a box of random cards from like a dozen different collectible games. Like there was some Marvel Heroes card collectible trading card game. I think Star Wars stuff, random sports things. I think one of the first things that I ever got was, were any of you ever into like the NBA much?
Yeah, I'm a big NBA
guy. Do you know
guy.
who Tracy McGrady was?
Yeah.
So, was it Tracy? I don't know. Someone who maybe was on the Kings at some point when I grew up in Sacramento, opened a restaurant, and if you like ate off the kids menu at the end of the meal, they would give you like 4 random like trading cards for random sports, and I got them, and I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing. And then someone told me that like trading cards were worth money, and I was like, oh, okay.
Now this is really cool.
Yeah, then I was, every time you walk into Target, it's like you peek down that aisle, and it's like there could be like thousands of dollars worth of cards in one of those packs.
And in most of those packs, there could even be 50 cents of cards in them.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
In total.
In total, yeah.
So I think all those cards from that thrift store came in a binder, and I had just so much random stuff. I even got my parents got me a Guinness Book of World Records book from like 2007, and in the center they had these little punch out like cards of like the dog that could fit the most tennis balls in its mouth and all these like random things. And
so
I
had
would
like cards of those?
Yeah. So I would just like throw anything that resembled a card into my new binder. There was some random, it was kind of a collectible game. It was a Pirates of the Caribbean game where they came with these little plastic cards that had punch out things, and you could like assemble a little ship, and then there was like the card that came with it had like stats, and I think you were supposed to like build a little fleet and like battle and do stuff, but I would just like
I remember that.
I would just shove anything that almost like resembled some kind of collectible card thing into this binder.
Dude, was it a big binder? Like
it was no, it was probably like a 1-inch binder, but I just wanted like everything that I could possibly find. And then, eventually I started playing Pokemon with one of my friends. Ooh. And when I was 10, I think, that was after we moved down to SoCal, and I went back to visit with him, and we went to Target and bought like one of those tins.
Oh,
I know the tins. Yeah.
The tins.
And because this was like Gen 4, and we bought one of those, and we're just like, we had no idea how to play. I think when Jacob was on, it was kind of a similar thing of like, when you're little, it's like you don't know the mechanics of the game. Like, I didn't know how the energy worked or anything. It's just like,
I still don't.
just ignore that shit. Like, just get the shiniest, like coolest looking, most evolved Pokemon you possibly can.
I think that's still how most people play.
Yeah. I think back at that Gen 4 time, I think I must have gotten a tin too. I remember getting a tin around that time, like just opening them, and probably none of the cards are anything right now, but it was really fun, like finding the evolution lines and them all being shiny or whatever.
Yeah. I went up to Sacramento to visit like by myself. I think my parents gave me like $60 for like food and like spending money for the week. And I think I ran out of food money because I spent it all on Pokemon. And I felt like so awkward because we went to like pizza or something, and I like tell my friend's grandma like, "Oh yeah, I don't have any money actually." But I knew I was like, I felt like I was in trouble because I knew I was supposed to save enough for money, but I was also like 11, so
It's expected.
Yeah,
Dude.
I want to go back in time and give young Jake like a mischief pack, like one of those random packs that have like cards with like random IDs and just like random like I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's just the funniest thing, and that just reminds me of like Jake's collection.
Yeah, just like random stuff in there. Some guy's ID, they're like worker like identification card.
Yeah, for real. Like
No.
like oh god,
Like a gift card to somewhere, just in Jake's card collection. He's
an
got
odd
an
Yu-Gi-Oh
Arby's
card,
gift card.
an Uno reverse card is in there.
this is like some setup for like some X-Files or like Dexter episode where I just like am collecting people's IDs and slowly piece together like a string of murders that I've committed.
No,
through a
he's
deck
trying
that
to
you
write a
build.
ransom note.
Yeah.
So, you really go pretty far back with a lot of like collectible card things, like just getting all kinds of random stuff and then getting into Pokemon and stuff. Did you play any kind of like, so obviously there's like the collecting aspect of it, but then there's like the game aspect of it.
Yeah.
Did you get into playing Pokemon at all, or when did you get into like playing with trading cards?
I think I played a tiny bit when they had like you could play Pokemon online, like the actual card game with the actual mechanics and everything of using energy, and I played that a little bit. Probably would have been Hearthstone was like the first time I played, like, and obviously like that's a collectible card game that's just digital, but
I was curious to hear about your Hearthstone days.
yeah, so I had a lot of friends that I played games with who were really into a bunch of different Blizzard stuff. And I had played like a little bit of World of Warcraft. So I knew like some of the characters that were in Hearthstone, but just a lot of the people that I played with who were kind of like an older generation of people who were into like nerdy stuff than I was, who had probably played like Magic back in the day when Hearthstone came out. They were all playing it, and so just as soon as it dropped, I started playing and got pretty into it.
What do you think, like, for like, since you've played Hearthstone but haven't played Magic prior to when we started playing, was it like a pretty easy transition over from like, you learned how to play with Hearthstone and then someone explained to you the rules of Magic? Do you think you picked it up maybe a little faster because you knew?
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Because even, if I tried to go from like Pokemon to Magic, I mean, there is some kind of energy, like mana type system.
Resource management.
Exactly. I would say that Hearthstone's a little bit more complicated. But I think because there's similar mechanics in some sense of having like haste versus like rush, or like, I think one of the biggest differences to me was like was kind of like how blocking worked and stuff, but that it was
Right.
it didn't take a lot of explaining to be like, okay, here's all the differences.
Yeah.
Not to get too off, but like when you were explaining Lorcana to me, like there's certain card games where it's like you can't target like a player or something like
Yeah.
that. At least there was enough similarity of
Right.
attacking like face versus like attacking a creature or things like that. Even types of decks and like themes, like there's classes which are kind of similar to like colors and Hearthstone. The classes in Hearthstone are similar to colors, but like there were token themed decks, which was actually
Right.
interesting because playing Hearthstone, like I had no reference for why it would be called a token. Like I understood what it was you were creating like a bunch of creatures that weren't like just the cards. It was not until like we were playing Magic like kind of significantly, and I started playing a deck that used tokens, and I was like, oh wait, this is why it's
This
called
is probably why it's named that. That's so crazy. That's really cool though. So that was I was going to say, like, I noticed like there's certain things about like a lot of trading card games. Could you remind me how Hearthstone's resource system works? Is it like turn by turn you get more things automatically?
Yeah, so you start with like one mana crystal, and then just every turn you get a subsequent extra one so you start with one, you have one to use. Turn 2, you have 2. It resets, your mana fills back up every new turn. And then once you get to 10, it caps. There's cards that can like affect how much mana you have. Like you can, like there's ramp type stuff of like, spend 2 and then you get an extra one on top of whatever you're going to get for next turn.
A very interesting thing about a lot of card games that are similar but different to Magic the Gathering, like one of the main things I notice is that they try to change the resource system so that you never have to like miss a land drop or you're guaranteed to get
You're
the
never
resource.
mana screwed.
You're never mana screwed. You don't have to build your deck around playing with resources. And I just have noticed that like whenever people try to reiterate the game or like update a card game where it's like Magic, like with Lorcana you mentioned, they have like a whole different resource system that I think is a bit more forgiving than Magic is with the lands.
Right.
But probably not as forgiving as Hearthstone.
Yeah, not as forgiving as Hearthstone, I would say. But it's just interesting to me that there are like those resource changes, and that's usually what the thing that's changed is.
Yeah, there's things that I always wonder if they're in place like that to be more approachable games, but also sometimes like I don't think that would be an example, but I wonder for those digital only card games if there's certain things that mechanically are different because it's not like a physical format.
There definitely are. There's even been with Magic the Gathering an attempt to make this format called Alchemy, which is an online exclusive format where they have cards that do things that could not be done in paper, like
Perpetually, I think, is like one of the big things. It's like things that will remember power and toughness or rules text changes even when it's in your hand or in your library.
Right. Yeah.
or it'll be like things where they add like cards to your library, like, and things like where you can put certain things at certain points in your library or at certain points in your graveyard, and the computer does all the checking for you. Keeping track of it in person would be kind of insane.
That was a big mindset shift playing paper Magic, was like counters and stuff, and it's like, oh, I have to like keep track of everything. It's not just doing it for me. It's like
Jake and Scoot Swarm.
Oh my god.
oh yeah, oh my god.
So
I mean, it's just exponentials.
yeah.
It's
So
math.
that kind of is a good place to dive into where you started getting into Magic. I believe I reached out to you one day and was like, hey Jake, do you ever like to play trading card games?
I don't know I don't remember if this came up much, but I had played before we played.
Oh, okay.
Very briefly. Very briefly.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So I had a friend who had been into Magic for quite a while. He was working at Starbucks, like not far from where I'd been living in college, and I don't know. He just asked me like if I wanted to play this game with him, which he had been big into Yu-Gi-Oh before, which I had never played. Well, I tried one time with my friend. I had no idea what was going on. It didn't help that he didn't either.
Oh,
we were like 9, so
Yu-Gi-Oh's one of those games.
but he started explaining Commander to me because that's what he had been playing, and had kind of a little pod that he'd play with like on the very odd occasion. But he basically was like, "Hey, do you want to try this?" I was like, "Sure." And then he would just play with me at Starbucks when he got off his shift, and we would just do like 1v1 Commander, and played a handful of times with him, and then I like went with him to watch a whole like Commander game.
Oh, cool.
Which was cool, but it was also kind of like lame to sit there for like 2 hours just watching four other people play.
Yeah.
Oh,
That does sound rough.
And this was at
especially
a
long
different
game.
era of Commander too, when the games were a little bit slower, and you didn't have as many built for Commander things that tend to speed games up. I feel.
Yeah, this would have been 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how
Definitely
different the landscape was, but
there would have been some Commander products, but even in the time since we started playing, they've really pumped the market full of like Commander specific cards.
right, yeah.
So you watched them play for 2 hours.
I remember honestly, like he made me very aware of like the cardboard crack kind of element of it, of like how hard people get into the game.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time I was like, I don't have the money for this. Like I know that as soon as I like let myself get into this, I'm just gonna like fall really hard and just start spending like all of my extra money on it, which at the time I had zero, and I was like, we'll try this later. Maybe when I'm like retired and I have like a pension that I can blow.
Yeah, put it on pause and pick it up a bit later.
Yeah.
So after that Commander game, was that the like kind of last experience you had with it before I reached out to you? But yeah, then I hit you up, said, "Have you heard of this game? Do you want to try like playing with me? It looks like they have cheap decks online." And kind of started that dialogue back and forth, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Did we play? Because you had a feather deck.
I built a feather deck
Yeah.
because I wanted to play Commander, and like I found the one I wanted. So it was really a matter of me building the deck first before playing ever. And then I started reaching out to people. I reached out to Jacob a bit because he got me into it. I reached out to you, and I think to Ron at the time before he was into it, and was just like, "Hey, like, do you want to get games in?" And I think, did you look around online at all and like end up buying a pre-con? Or
I think I just went into there's a comic book store that sold Magic cards near my parents' house, and I just like walked in one day. I think what I actually did was I was with my girlfriend at the time and I kind of bought like a pre-con under the pretense of it maybe being a birthday present for you. I think I did get you something else, like a pack or something, but I was like, I was just going to pick this up maybe as like a present for Mark. And then I was like, I'm going to keep this. This is mine.
dude, I'm
And that
so
was my-
happy.
And
Yeah,
that was the Oboon pre-con, was it not?
Yeah. Which I really liked. I think I had always kind of leaned green when I even had played a tiny bit before, but yeah, it seemed really fun. I think when I was in the store, I looked up some reviews of the pre-con real quick, and it seemed like pretty decent. It wasn't too expensive or anything, but it was
those $20 pre-cons.
Yeah.
Imagine if
Back
we
in
still
the
had
day.
those.
I know
Those were the best.
Yeah, it was a really nice jumping off point as a landfall deck, especially as a beginner. It's super nice to have a deck where you really don't have to worry too much about getting your land drops.
Right. And the cool thing is you get to use those resources quite literally to beat people with them with that specific deck. You don't even need to tap them for mana. You just hit people with them.
It's true. Yeah.
I think that is an element of the game that I don't want to say precons are definitely not being moved away from, but them being like at that $20 price point was an experiment that they kind of had for a little bit that I honestly think they did for 3 sets. And you happened to start playing when one of those sets was still like kind of out on the market. And that I really, really wish they stuck with that, even if they filled the decks up with like, you know, penny cards or like just like honestly junk. Like, but if it's a functional commander deck that someone could sit down to a table to and play like a game with, because even if your deck doesn't have all the crazy stuff in it, like there are commander games where you slide by, get away, and then have a big board and go that way.
I mean, the starter decks are kind of in that range. I think they were like $25 per deck.
The
new ones that came out.
Yeah,
new
this
starter
last year.
decks.
I know at the time they were, I don't know exactly where they were at like throughout it all, but I remember starting to see them closer to the $30 range, which is definitely, I mean, for someone really just starting to play, I feel like $20 and $30 like as a first purchase might be a bit of a difference.
I mean, yes, but they're also very cohesive decks. Like they're very like built around strong synergies, decent land bases. You know, like.
Well, let's ask Jake if I mean, just because you have less info or you're less entrenched with all this. Do you think like, regardless of the cohesion, like I agree with you, they're better decks now, but regardless of the cohesion, do you think like having that $20 commander deck versus there being a $30 one would make like a big difference to you if you were like just getting into it? Like let's say that Obun deck was like $30 or $29.99, 28, something like that.
It could. I mean, $10 isn't like too bad. I think 20 versus like 40 is like feels pretty significant, especially when you're first coming into it, thinking of it more as just a game and not like a game that includes these like little assets that you're like collecting and like investment pieces.
Building your portfolio.
Yeah, you know, it's like not looking at when you first start out, you just look at the price of the deck. You don't look at like, okay, here's the deck list and here's how every individual card shakes down price wise, and it's like, you know, you're not watching reviews about like, here's the actual additive value of this deck if you were to buy everything on like TCG Trader or something. You're just looking at it like it's a little box that you buy at Target or wherever, because you don't know about like people on YouTube who explain all this stuff.
That's a really interesting perspective, I think, coming into it as like like looking at it as like a board game, which Commander really is more so than regular Magic the Gathering, but looking at it more as like, oh, I'm gonna buy this like board game thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I was just looking up some of the precons while we were talking about it. And so, yeah, it's weird because you have some pre-constructed decks now that are going as high as $100. And that's like at target price, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you're seeing the Commander Masters ones, like with the Eldrazi and the Slivers, I've seen pictures of them being charged for like $105 for a pre-constructed deck. And again, they're probably the best pre-constructed decks we've got like ever up till this point. But still, it's absurd that you're trying to get a new player into this game and saying, here's a one-time box that's probably not going to last you your whole like gaming career. In fact, you might want to upgrade it after 2 months, and we're going to charge you a very premium price on it. And now I'm looking and I'm seeing the brand new Wilds of Eldraine commander decks on TCG Player. The Virtue and Valor, the green-white deck, has a market price of $24 on TCG Player.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's
not bad at all.
Ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure it's probably like $40 if you buy it at some kind of store.
I think the Fey Dominion one ran me about $45. Yeah.
I think this is also kind of the problem with them taking away MSRP is like it's entirely based on demand now. So Ron was talking about these Eldrazi decks, like or this Eldrazi precon. There were 4 precons in this set. 2 of the precons people really wanted, and 2 of them people were like more mid about. The 2 that people really wanted are running closer to $100 at a lot of stores. A lot of people will sell them closer to 100.
I mean, the ones that people are meh about are still going for like 60, I want to say.
50, yeah, like around 50, 60.
They're all fantastic out of the box. It's just a matter of themes and stuff.
Right.
Actually, like every time I've seen like gameplay video of them like straight out of the box, the Eldrazi and the Sliver are really like low grade, meh, like not good decks in my opinion.
Yeah, it's honestly just the name or like the pieces included that are driving it up. But regardless of that, like it's this supply and demand kind of like thing now, rather than it being like, here's a $20 commander deck, you know. Now it's like, okay, like, well, this store is selling this one of the commander decks for 35 and this one for 40 and this one is going for 25 right now in certain places. And it just, to look at it as a board game, it makes it so weird, because it's like, why are these different, like, you know, things I can play with, different expansions of this board game costing all this different money all over the place? Looking at it as like a person who knows the card values, it starts to make a little more sense, but I really don't think they should have gone away from the MSRP system.
Yeah, and so, yeah, it's interesting to see how your experience would have been going in now versus then. But, you know, when you did get into the game and once you got that pre-con and we kind of had our original pod set up with, like, you, me, and Mark and stuff, I mean, how did you feel kind of going into that, and how was your experience kind of like moving from, oh, yeah, I kind of just play, to like, you know, hey, I'm into this and now I have a regular group I play with?
I think it was kind of a natural transition because we were already like doing D&D. I think that was a pretty big facilitator in us having kind of a pod, because for the most part, when we were playing Magic, it was the 3 of us.
Yeah.
When we first started, because it was just me and Mark doing 1v1 commanders, and like I think Obun could have done okay in a pod, but like 1v1 versus a feather deck, I was just getting creamed.
It's still horrifying now.
It was
it's
it was
really
ridiculous that but you know, like I didn't know anything about balancing with Commander. I don't think you knew too much about it at the time, but we would play those games a lot, and it'd be like, damn, like this feather deck is really good.
Wow, why am I so good at Magic?
Yeah, right? Like I just started playing.
Am I just
winning.
really that much smarter than Jake?
I'm just winning most of these games. Like Jake is really needing to step his... No. What was interesting that I noticed that happened was once Ron got a deck and started getting involved in the pods, it would be like me and Ron like racing to get the biggest thing out on the board first, and then we probably went to take each other out first, and then whoever was left at the end died to the scoot swarm that Jake was just building up in the background.
Yeah,
or if we blew up enough, we would just kill Jake immediately afterwards.
Yeah, that was like, you know, I think after it was the 3 of us playing in a little pod, I started to take apart the deck and reformat it, turned it into the Aloro deck. No,
you turned it into Omnath because you decided you needed blue to stop our bullshit.
I had 3 decks that all started with O. No, Omnath, which was super fun.
The 4-color Omnath.
I had tried to build an Aloro deck.
Right.
That was so complicated and like expensive.
Yep.
But yeah, that was by the point. It was the 3 of us, and I started to see like the politicking, and I think
Ron loved his politics from the start.
That was a little bit of like a deterrent of like, it was, I don't know. It's interesting because I didn't play a ton in a 4-player pod, but there was so much of like, you know, someone's gonna be mad about what I do, and they're both trying to convince me right now of like,
don't hit the
the other guy.
It would start to become like such a
rock,
convoluted
paper, scissors,
kind of rock paper scissors, but it was like if you don't hit me in 3 turns, I'll
starting
give
to
you something.
make contracts.
Yeah, it was. People were like pitching and making sales and stuff, and it was just like,
I gotta
we're
admit,
supposed to kill each other. Like that's the point of the game.
there's an aspect of Commander. It's one that when we have talked to some people who are not like in Magic the Gathering but don't play Commander, one of the deterrents for them is the politics. I definitely think there's an aspect where I have at times been dissuaded because of the politics as well, because it does feel like, you know, in a typical game, you think, okay, I'm going to try to set up my thing so that I can win the game, and that's that. But in Commander, it's like, okay, if you are the best at setting up your game plan, you now have 3 people attacking you. Or, you know, if you look too scary, maybe everyone's going to be looking at you when another person is actually about to win, or something along those lines. It's way more of a different experience than I would say playing a typical game of Magic the Gathering, sometimes even a typical game of anything.
Right. It totally is different. And I think for me, that's kind of what attracts me to Commander. I know a lot of people don't like politics, and some people even get annoyed with my politics specifically. But I will say, you know, for me, that's a difference between Commander and just, you know, 1v1 slinging spells. Because in 1v1, you don't want to make deals with your opponent. You want them dead. It's not going to serve you any better to get potentially dicked over by a deal you made. But with Commander, you know, it's almost like Mafia or like One Night Ultimate Werewolf or something, where you're trying to convince people, hey, I'm not the werewolf, I'm not the bad guy, and you need to kind of play that social aspect of the game, and that's what makes it a lot more engaging, and you get funny moments and cool moments potentially from that. Sometimes there are feel bads, sure, but there are feel bads with Magic all the time when you're playing a Wild West format that pretty much everything is legal in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also, it's just like you got to also remember that you're at such a disadvantage having 3 opponents versus just 1. So, like, the politics does really kind of matter in the long run when you think about it. You know, like, you got to.
Some people will outright ignore you and say, oh, you're politicking? Okay, I'm targeting you now because you're politicking. And it happens. But yeah, I agree. It's another dimension to the game.
It's a way more of a social game, I think, and it's interesting because there's a lot of workarounds. Like some people will see that they have not had a fun game of Commander and be like, okay, I don't want to play against counter spells ever again. Or they'll go into a game of Commander where, you know, they've really successfully politicked and it like didn't work out for them, or they didn't politic at all and it didn't work out for them. And people, I think, find a lot of different ways to fix these problems. And because of that, like, I think it really is a social format, because you're probably going to have the best times when you have kind of established what you want to do in the game and have been able to join a group with the same, like, mindset. Yeah. Where if you want to play a game with absolutely no politicking whatsoever, there's like a Commander game for you out there at this point. If you want to play a Commander game where all you do is try to make deals with people,
then play with
a Commander table for you out there with 3 Rons at the table.
I was going to say, actually, you know, if you want to be a 4th in our 3 pod, like that's probably going to be your experiences that you encounter, just nothing but politicking.
You know what's gonna happen, and you know what I noticed? It's going to be us 3, you, me, Cody, me, and Mark. Just one person's going to go off. The other 2 are doing everything in their power to knock them down a peg, and we're just infighting, and then you're just kind of looking at like you degenerates.
Yeah, like looking at these 3 bozos like beating each other up, not getting anything done. Like,
no, my cardboard is stronger. No, his cardboard is actually more dangerous.
Yeah, and then we all have to try to convince the people that like don't know what's going on who's the biggest threat, when all of us are really just doing horrible degenerate shit on the table. To get back to you, Jake, I wanted to kind of to like talk about. So I know you were mentioning you took that little pause in the early moments of playing Commander with your friend. You saw that, oh, this is a cardboard crack route. I remember right about after you and me started playing, maybe Ron got in. there was a point in time where I would say I was fairly into the game at the time. I was buying stuff here and there, but you blew me away with how much you bought and how quickly. I was like, whoa. Like, I remember you bought 5 of the Strixhaven pre-con
I bought all of the pre-release
pre-release
boxes,
kits.
yeah,
5
because
of
they
the
had one
pre-release
per
kits.
house or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
Now part of that was just me being like a sucker as like as a customer. Like I went to this shop and I was gonna buy, I think, just 1 or 2, and the guy's like, "Hey, we're actually offering a discount if you buy all 5." And I was like,
Well,
a $10 discount.
shit.
I just have to spend like $200 or whatever it was. And I was like, I'd be stupid not to. So I just bought all of it on top of like whatever order I had gone there to pick up for like my other commander decks.
That's right. Yeah.
That was like the first set that I was around for kind of the whole life cycle. Because what was Oboon? Was that Zendikar Rising?
That was
Yeah,
Zendikar
I believe
Rising.
So I got that one. Whenever I started playing was like
You started playing.
right after Kaldheim had come out.
Yeah, right after Kaldheim. That's
So,
what kind of both of us.
Yeah,
did.
it was kind of like I would just go and I would just grab packs from this store for Zendikar Rising or Kaldheim, but I hadn't really been into the game enough to like see the life cycle. So it was like I was into it enough that I was watching videos and like understanding what pre-release even was like. And then Strixhaven was announced and was coming out, and I kind of got to watch the whole thing. And so it was the first one where I was like, oh, I get to like participate in a pre-release or in some fashion. We didn't go to
Right.
like an event, but like I just purchased some of the pre-release boxes and
At
stuff.
that time, I don't think I even knew what like limited was or what that pre-release format was. So you bought these
Yeah.
boxes, and I just figured these are little promo boxes that you
Right,
open
that's what
with
it
little,
felt
little
like.
goodies
I mean,
in them.
Yeah, I mean, it came in like a cool themed box for all the little color combos, and
Yeah.
there was like a dice theme to each one.
Lo and behold, you can actually take these boxes, open them up, put a
Right.
deck together out of everything you open, and play against other people with it.
Yeah, it was also a rude awakening after the set was like out of understanding that when cards are in pre-release, like the value that they're at online is not
Not where they
reflective of So I was like
Yeah.
looking at all these cards that would eventually become like 1-cent cards. But it said that they were like a couple bucks each, and I was like, "Oh my god, I have like $1,000 in cards here." And then like 2 weeks later, it's like I still had like a gold span dragon or something. But
Yeah, I remember you pulled that.
That
for
one was
the
Kaldheim,
pack.
yeah.
I remember when you got
Was that
collect. You told me like you went to this random store. They had like one collector booster pack on the wall. You picked it up and opened like a borderless gold span dragon or something.
Nice.
Wow, yeah, it's wild to me. I'm looking at Strixhaven right now. The most expensive card in that set is only like $15, and that's the borderless Crackle of Power.
I don't remember that set being
You're
great.
forgetting
Well, they
the
had the super
mystical
cool
archives.
What was-
Right,
yes,
not including
those-
mystical
those
archives,
spells.
right.
Those were really.
Oh, that's when I got the Teferi's protection.
That's when you got the Teferi's
Yep.
protection.
Yeah.
That was a big hit.
That's a good one.
So, yeah, that was like, I think that was a lesson for all of us, right? Because I remember I opened like a pretty decent card from my Strixhaven box as well, and like I think the pre-release kit was $30 or so, and I remember opening this card and I'm like, oh my god, guys, I got a $30 card!
Right.
Like this is the whole box
Yeah.
right here, and then.
$3.
Yeah, well, I don't think it went that far down, but it was like now like the set came out, the set's released, and maybe like dropped more than half of its value like really quickly, and I remember, yeah, definitely you learned a lesson from that. I learned a big lesson from that, but I remember that like
I learned from your mistakes.
yeah, you came in and learned from our mistakes. But I remember that pre-release kind of cycle of like, oh, this is exciting, this is expensive, this is like sought after, and then the whole set actually hits the market and all the prices drop, and it's like, oh, I actually you know, I thought I had $200, but
Yeah.
actually I have $50 or
Yeah.
whatever.
What set came after that? Was it?
Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
So I really only like was super active for like 2 sets.
Pretty much,
basically.
you were active. That's the thing. Like I remember, it felt like a longer time because it was such an integral part of my.
Well, there was also
Playing
Modern
Magic.
Horizons 2 that came
Oh,
out.
no, we
as
did
well.
that, yeah.
I forgot about that completely. That
Yeah.
came
So
out.
Strixhaven, then Modern Horizons 2.
And that's when
then
Cody got
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
Cody
Yeah.
got into it, Modern Horizons 2. Okay, so there were 3 sets. I remember Modern Horizons 2 coming out and you buying stuff. And we were all trying to get the monkey, and none of us really got the monkey. Oh wait, Cody bought a box and got
He's the one
monkey.
who traded me my Enchantress Commander, which I still run to this day.
I remember that. I remember
You're responsible for my most degenerate deck.
Who's it again?
Sithis, Harvest Hand.
I
We'll
don't,
show
I
you
don't even
later.
remember that shit.
This dick.
Oh Jesus Christ. But we definitely played through that. I remember there was a lot of excitement there, but the thing that I was remembering is like I remember you got into it really fast. You bought all these boxes. You were super into the game, like getting even more stuff and getting some commander decks. And then I remember you also got out of the game pretty quickly. It was like a spark, you know, like you really into it.
Burned fast and bright, and then
Yeah, but it kind of made me wonder. Like, I imagine this happens with a lot of people with Magic: The Gathering because there's all this exciting stuff to kind of get into and explore and dive into. I've heard, you know, plenty of people say they've gone in and out of Magic: The Gathering multiple times. Like they, you know, are into it and then they stop playing for 20 years, they get back into it later, and then maybe intermittent breaks there. But it makes me wonder if the way they've designed this game now is not meant to retain players, but more so to get like people to impulse buy stuff, like spend their money and then get burned out right away. But it doesn't matter because more people will just
Because they've already gotten all the money.
Right, they've gotten the money from the person, and their advertising or their whatever strategies are good enough to get another person to just like take that person's place.
yeah, I feel like, you know, as someone who goes down a lot of rabbit holes and can get into like different hobbies pretty quickly, and like, you know, if I find like a new kind of flavor of the week for myself, I'll just, you know, disappear into that new thing, whether it be like getting really into making espresso or like golf
Marshmallows.
or marshmallows or whatever it is, you know, making something or like doing some new sport or game or
Yeah.
whatever it is. I think one of the differences with Magic for me as far as where it's sat is like my investment in that short period of time doesn't feel like I'm left with something significant that I can come back to it with. Like, to be succinct, like if I get really into golf and I buy like a set of clubs and I'm like going all the time and like hitting up the range and trying to golf a lot and then stop, like I still have my clubs, I still have all my stuff. I can just go back and get back into it. Or like a lot of things, I feel like you can do a big initial investment with like time and resources and like trying to learn the thing, and then you can kind of come back to it with a lot of the same stuff. But it felt like when I stopped playing, so many sets were still coming out. It felt like I was just like getting way left behind. And it also felt like if I wanted to stay in it, it was going to be so much to keep up with. Like, you know, I still have my decks and I can still like come back and play. Like there's no reason that I can't play like with my Omnath deck in Commander or something.
Yeah.
Like it's
You've
still
been able to play that and win with pods against our more current.
yeah,
decks.
it's totally viable. I think
But you'll have like 3 of us being like, "Oh, you should put this card in. You should put that card in."
Oh, what
like,
does that card do?
compared
That
to
does what?
compared to a lot of other games, it's like there's so much of like all these cards people are playing and it's like I have no idea what that does. I don't like every time someone plays a card, I don't want to like, can I see that? What does that do? Try and figure out like, okay, how's this going to fit into like a whole deck, as opposed to like if you're playing with someone who understands like most sets and most types of cards and themes. Yeah, it was just
The
a lot to keep up
understanding
with.
of the game can be, I mean, like a big learning curve just to like even keep up with stuff. I totally get what you're saying. And I wish, I mean, this was the problem that I think more people were talking about around the time that you were into it and then got out of it, was just how many products were coming out and how crazy it was that like just nonstop products are getting dumped. It's like never like it's always spoiler season. Like as soon as one set is basically done getting spoiled and about to be released, like another set starts getting like new cards revealed for it. And it's this like never ending unstoppable cycle of previews and sneak peeks and buy the next thing and we're going to release this card that's going to go. It is crazy overwhelming. Like, and I know we've talked about it in former episodes, but it truly is a detriment to more casual players, I think.
Do we want to go through the list of how many sets have come out since Jake has stopped?
Oh boy.
I do
Here.
want to get
I've
maybe
got-
Jake's impression of some of these. So last one that that came out since you played
Since Forgotten Realms. right?
Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
And it was Innistrad.
had-
We're including Jumpstart and stuff.
We got Innistrad Midnight Hunt. We had Innistrad Crimson Vow, which was Vampire Wedding. We had Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which was like cyberpunk meets like Japan. We had Streets of New Capenna, which was like mobsters.
Right.
We had Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, which was a whole other command.
It's like Forgotten Realms, but for Commander, basically.
Yeah. Then there was Double Masters 2022. Then there was Dominaria United, which had way more legendary creatures. Then there was the Warhammer 40K collab where they had 4 new.
Those were just
commander
like
decks.
precons, though.
It was a pretty significant.
It was
thing,
like
though.
100 something unique
Yeah.
cards or something like that.
Then they had Unfinity, which was the newest unset, and it had legal cards in Commander in it, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, no more silver bordered now. They just have a little acorn at the bottom that you
If
need to
they're
look for.
illegal, yeah. Then there's the Brothers War, which was like an artifact heavy set that had to do a lot with Magic's history. In that set, they had Transformers cards. Then there was Jumpstart 2022, which they
I thought
had
we weren't
already.
including Jumpstarts.
I'm mentioning it. They had new
Alright.
cards in that set.
There were a lot of relevant Commander cards in that. set.
Yeah, even more things printed in. Then they did Dominaria Remastered. You remember Time Spiral Remastered, right? That came out around the time you were playing as well. Dominaria Remastered was kind of like a sequel to that, but like focusing on the history of Dominaria. Then there was Phyrexia All Will Be One, which is like the big bad Phyrexian episode. And then there was March of the Machine, which is like part 2 of Avengers Endgame or whatever, with all these crazy things happening all over the place.
I love how Jake stopped counting.
I mean, it's just Cody's got the counter
That's
up.
what 14.
Yes.
Then there's March of the Machine Aftermath, which they made like these new little packs that are like 6 cards deep. They're very small and
It
had
was like a
few-
little epilogue set.
epilogue pack is what they were called. Then they did Lord of the Rings. Then they did.
I did buy one Lord of the Rings pack.
Oh, Jake bought
stinky.
Lord of the
Just
Rings.
one, but
I also remember for my birthday one year, you bought me a Dominaria Remastered.
Oh, yeah,
pack.
okay.
I remember getting that at the shop, and I was like, "This is awesome." Then they had Commander Masters, which was like a Commander set, pretty much. Then they had the current set, Wilds of Eldraine.
And
All of those have Commander products, or most of them have Commander products attached.
Well, and then there's going to be the Doctor Who Commander set.
Coming out right around the corner.
I mean, I think by the time this airs, it's going to be coming out.
Yeah,
Right.
probably.
But yeah, so since you started, when you left the game, so Adventures in Forgotten Realms came out July 23rd, 2021. There have been that many sets.
18.
18. Jeez.
18 and
18.
just over 2 years.
Yes, and these are all like again, we're not including everything. These are just like the Commander relevant
Right.
sets that
Yeah.
have the significant
That's
release.
almost 10 per year.
More
it's
than that
probably
if you're
more.
including some of the
It's like
stuff.
one. It's like
I've
every
been
1.5
skipping
months,
things.
there's a new set coming out of some
Yeah,
kind.
this isn't including all the Commander precons that have come out. This isn't including some of the other like promo online stuff.
When did
like,
Zendikar Rising come out?
2020, late 2020. I think fall 2020.
So
Is that right?
I feel like
Zendikar Rising came out 9/25/2020.
Yes, it was right.
so from late September to July. We're looking at around 9 months of the roughly period that I played.
But you didn't play when Zendikar Rising came out.
Not when it came out,
You
but yeah.
played closer to like I want to say that February. So you played maybe for
But I played
5 to
a little bit after
Okay.
AFR came out. But
yeah.
that's 8-9 months.
Okay.
For about 4-ish sets.
Yeah.
So I feel like for us that period, it feels like longer in retrospect because it was 4 sets.
The sets
Yeah.
were further spaced apart.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, maybe like that was a point in time that I felt longer because that's when I was getting into Magic and that's what I was like giving that explanation to. But it probably has something to do as well with like these sets were coming out in longer intervals of each other. Whereas now it just kind of feels like we're rolling off the deep end with just like thing after thing after thing here. But no, that's really interesting. I definitely, for people who have been into it and want to get back into it, it's very frustrating for me to see them just print so much stuff constantly. Like Commander is sadly probably the most approachable format because you can just kind of roll up with anything and it'll work sometimes. But even with that, like it just constantly changing and evolving and shifting, and now old cards are obsolete and new card came out that's 1 mana less or something like that,
At instant speed.
yeah, or instant speed instead of sorcery. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, hopefully one day we could get you back to play a game with us. Even with the old Omnath deck, I'm sure we could run a pod back.
That is a nice part. I guess there's like a double-edged sword kind of thing with Commander of like, it's kind of overwhelming as a new player because like everything is available, but that's also one of the things that kind of makes it approachable is like, you're not worried about, I'm going to buy these cards and then in like 2 years, like I can't use them anymore. It's like, it is, evergreen in that sense. So I can always come back with my deck and just play. Like that is cool.
There's no limitation there. The only limitation comes with, I guess it depends who you're playing with, right? If you're playing with a pod that is very focused on being competitive and is very focused on having up-to-date stuff, then maybe like that becomes a little bit less feasible. Whereas if you're playing with a pod that's just like throwing around casual decks for fun and not really paying attention to what's going on the board, like you got a different scenario there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's been a wild journey, I feel like, since you came into it and left. But if again ever you one day want to hop back in with us, we'd be happy to take you along and play some fair decks.
We could
to.
scale it. And I think Mark put together a cool little game for you if you want to give that a shot.
Yes,
All right.
we have organized a fun little thing here with a bunch of cards that have come out since you stopped playing Magic. We have a bunch of cards in here that we would consider to be really good in Commander.
Or really bad.
Well, there's
one card in here that we consider to be maybe not so good in Commander. I'm sure there are people who are going to find a way to make this the most busted card ever.
Sure.
But as far as we know,
It's a real stinker.
There's a real stinker among these cards. Yeah. So I'll probably read them off to you,
All right.
let you see them, let you look at them, maybe get your thoughts on each one. And
Be sure to fold them in half and put a crease down the middle.
Right.
Oh God!
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you how much
Don't do that
these
on the
cards
one.
are worth.
Yeah, just don't do it on mine. Only on everyone else's.
Yeah. Ron, one of Ron's cards is in here. He
Okay.
doesn't want you to
I
fold
think I have
that
like
one
2 in
half.
there.
So let's start off with some common cards. We have a card called Ren's Resolve. It's 1 in a red. It's a sorcery. It says exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. You can have a look at that one. First impressions on that bad boy. He's speechless.
Is this a common, like, does this feel red to you?
I'd say, I mean, to me it does because red is a color of impulsivity and you're exiling the top of your library.
Sure.
So you're not going to get to play them after the end of your next turn. Not this turn, but at the end of your next turn for that
It
card.
maybe feels slightly less red than when like you and me were playing Magic. Red
Right.
definitely felt slightly different. At this point in time, that feels like a pretty red
It's
card.
a very red card
Okay.
now.
but
Yeah.
but back when we were playing, it might have felt slightly less red, I would say.
I think I'm trying to like picture why I would want to, like the kind of red deck that I'm playing that I would want to exile and then play. I guess I guess creating.
It's
hand
essentially
size
it's
or-
almost essentially like card draw kind of.
Sure,
But only
I guess
like,
so.
Temporary. You get it.
Yeah,
for,
Fast card draw.
Okay.
Fast card draw.
Sure.
and then
Okay.
goes away. So that's the first one
Okay.
there. We have a card called Lorien Revealed. It's another sorcery. It's 3 colorless and 2 blue. It says draw 3 cards, and then it also has the ability called Island Cycling. Island Cycling says you pay 1, you discard this card, search your library for an island card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. That was a lot of words, but
Yeah, so
But-
either basically you draw a bunch of cards or you just discard this card and go find an island.
Okay. I'll read this. I'll let you read the next
the
one.
next one. We have a card called Dragon's Rage Channeler. It is a red mana 1/1 creature, human shaman. I just realized this card came
is
out
an old
while you
card.
were playing Magic the Gathering, but it was in the middle of that time, so it's not like older than you or anything.
Mark wanted to put as many red cards in here as possible.
So it says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, surveil 1. That means look at the top card of your library, and you can choose to either put that in your grave or just keep it there. So it's like scrying, but you put it in your grave instead.
Okay.
It also has Delirium. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2 and has flying and needs to attack each turn.
Okay. That sounds fun.
We have Tyvar's Stand. It is a green instant. It's green and X, so you can pay as much mana into it as you want. It says target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains hexproof and indestructible until end of the turn.
Damn.
We have.
It's a good reaction.
I know, right? That's a card that's come out. This, you know what? I'm taking that card out because that hasn't come out that's come out before you were playing. There is this card called Terra Sunder. It is 1 green and 1 colorless. It's an instant speed spell. It has a kicker cost of 1 black and 1 colorless. It says exile target artifact or enchantment. If this spell was kicked, which means you paid the cost in addition to it being cast, exile target non-land permanent instead. All right, and now we're getting to the rares and mythics of what we've got ready for you here. We've got Ratadrabic of Urborg. It is a 4-mana legendary creature zombie wizard, white, black, and 2 colorless. Has vigilance and ward 2. Other zombies you control have vigilance, and whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. So
That's a beautiful card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's one of the cool stained glass art treatments from that one.
I gotta say the stained glass art treatment is one of my favorites of recent time.
Okay.
Then we have Ashiok, Wicked Manipulator. This is a 5-mana planeswalker. if you would pay life while your library has at least that many cards in it, exile that many cards from the top of your library instead. That's just the static ability. The +1 says look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them and put the other into your hand. The -2 ability says create 2 1/1 Black Nightmare creature tokens, and those tokens have at the beginning of combat on your turn, if a card was put into exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I have the token here for you to look at. Yeah. And then the ultimate is target player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the total mana value of cards you own in exile.
Sounds pretty. I always have to like read a card to actually understand.
That
what
is
it is.
a
Sounds,
wordy
There,
card.
that is a
sounded-
mini novella over there.
that sounded
yeah.
pretty insane.
It sounds like there's there's a lot
Sounds
going
like a
on
lot
there.
that you can do with that.
Okay.
And then last
Yeah.
but not least, or maybe least, you don't know, we have Sheoldred the Apocalypse. It's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It costs 2 black and 2 colorless. It has Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life.
It's a 4/5, right?
It's a 4/5, yeah. So sorry if the listeners listening just had like a whole mouthful of cards, but a mouthful of words talked at him. But Jake is having a gander at these cards right now, and we'll see what he says, which one he thinks is the stinker of the bunch.
Okay, so my like puzzle solving brain is trying to reconcile the fact that like there's 2 cards that I'd have to like double check if those are actually valuable.
Well, you know,
Like,
they are commons. They're
mechanically.
commons. Yeah.
Mechanically. Or good, let's say.
Right.
And then there's 2 cards that are not sleeved. And my question is, does that mean that one of those is the stinker because you don't care about it?
So let's put it this way. Certain cards that are, it doesn't necessarily mean that if a card is expensive, it's good, and if a card is cheap, it's bad.
Yeah, also, Mark does tend to double sleeve more of his
True.
cards than I do.
Can we do this, though? I'm going to eliminate 4 of these.
Eliminate 4 of them, those being good cards, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And which 4 are you eliminating?
He is
I've eliminated Dragon's Rage Channeler,
Ratadrabic,
Sheoldred, and Ashiok.
Ashiok.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Shieldred's so fucking nuts. It doesn't even.
Am I still-
I can't.
We'll reveal it to you at the end.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll reveal it at the end. but
Okay.
yeah.
Blah 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 blah. You guys chat for a sec. I'm gonna look
Okay.
at these.
Yeah.
All right. So
I mean,
yeah. Well,
these are all kind of cards that I picked out of, or me, Ron, and Cody picked out of the more recent sets since Jake's been around, and a lot of them see a good amount of play. Some of them especially see CEDH play.
yes.
Oh, yes.
Which sometimes is not the most obvious thing. So cards that seem like they do not much can maybe
Do a whole lot.
Yeah. I'll reveal the card that we didn't show Jake because that card is before Jake's time, not after it. Teamer Sabretooth. That card goes pretty crazy with a certain CEDH staple known as Dockside Extortionist.
Hey, we discovered how to break Dockside.
What? Impossible, right? So this is run in all kinds of decks where you could keep bouncing Dockside and playing Dockside again for Dockside reasons, but
To generate infinite mana and
infinite creature ETB and all that fun stuff. So that was the one we eliminated off the bat, since that was before Jake's time rather than after.
I'm gonna feel real dumb if I get this wrong, but also I'll give myself grace. I haven't
You
been
should give
playing.
yourself grace because we did not make this obvious.
Okay, so just off of instinct, and maybe I'm totally off because I'm not in touch with what good cost is for card draw. Is it this one?
Lorien revealed.
Lorien revealed is Jake's answer, his final answer. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Jake has picked the wrong card.
Okay, wait. Can I have a hint?
Do you want what kind of hint do you want? Do you want like a second guess?
I can tell you which one it is.
Don't tell him which one it is. I'll tell you this. It was one of the first 4 that you put aside.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see.
I'll a little bit about Lorien Revealed is
And why it's actually pretty good.
island cycling for one is or general land cycling is for 1 mana is really good because this gets you potentially a dual land or a triome to your hand.
It's good early in the game so that you can go get your land drop, and even if it's like later in the game and you don't necessarily need the land, it still has utility as
a
the
card
spell.
draw. It's almost like the island cycling is actually the useful part, and then the draw 3 cards is like the extra utility.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah,
But-
because 5 mana is a lot of mana to spend on drawing 3 cards in blue.
On top of all that, it is a blue card, so it can be exiled to play Force of Will, a blue counter spell that requires you to exile a blue card from your hand.
Okay. Is it either Dragon's Rage Channeler or Radadrabic?
I think you should pick one.
Yeah, pick one.
I don't know. Dragon's Rage Channeler?
Dragon's Rage Channeler is not the card.
Okay.
Ron, do the ant thing. Dragon's Rage Channeler is a really solid red 1-drop that gives pretty decent card selection, especially when you consider red is a color that could use extra card advantage and selection.
Also, if you're playing it in other colors that may have ways to use those cards in your graveyard,
Right.
or just wants to dig a little further down, it's always great.
Is it the best red 1-drop around? Probably not, but is it one of the top 5? Yeah, probably.
It's played in Modern, I think.
It is.
sometimes. Yeah, so it's
I mean, it's
definitely
no
one of
Dash
them.
Monkey, but
No, it's not Dash
It's no monkey.
All right. Do you want to?
Should we reveal it to
I
you? Do
think
you want
so.
one more last chance
I
at
don't
this?
know that. I would need another hint, I guess.
Okay, you picked between...
it is a black card.
It is a purely black card.
but- okay. So I was totally off. Is it Ashiok?
It is
It's Ash.
indeed Ashiok.
So I guess, yeah. So I'm having not played a lot of black or exile. I
Listen,
guess,
we gave you a real curveball because
Yeah.
that has so many words on it, but it has so many words that like even I
They're
don't-
very niche.
It's niche
At
it's,
best.
It exiles a lot of your cards, right? So you can't even really play them later. Like
You could very easily exile your win conditions.
yeah, your combo pieces, your win conditions, and yeah, I literally don't see a way on this card to get the exiled cards back.
No.
Like they just use your.
I will say, as you were reading it, I was like, okay, like I do run my Prosper deck that cares about exiling
Right.
cards like Ren's Resolve.
Right.
And so I'm thinking maybe in that deck it might be okay, but even then, how much mana does Ashiok cost?
5 mana.
Yeah, there are so many better options to play with your Exile Zone, and this is in a commander deck with red and black.
No,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's no way to get the cards out of exile to use in Prosper.
Sure, and I'm like, okay, it's cool. Maybe she can create some creatures that will get pretty big because I exile a lot of cards anyways. But even then, I thought about it. I'm like, I usually play my cards in exile. That's what you want to do with cards when you set them aside in a zone that nobody can interact with.
I think this has been a little like I don't know, maybe just goes to show that there are so many new Magic cards printed like all the time that it's so hard to keep track of
Right.
like any one of them. This Ashiok is from the newest set. It's
The only Planeswalker.
the
in
only
that set.
planeswalker in that set. It's one of however many cards are in this new set that are potentially good in this, that, the other thing. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if we're completely wrong about this and like next year someone figures out this card is absolutely nuts and goes crazy with it, and you know, it becomes a new combo piece somehow.
But as of now, it's like a $2 mythic or something.
And then yeah, the rest of these are all at the very least solid, if not part of like combo win condition.
Yeah, Shieldred
things.
is just absolutely busted in so
She's a
many different
house.
formats right now, like in Standard,
that one-
and Legacy, and Commander.
Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't played a ton of black, but I mean that was just reminding me of when I was trying to build that Aloro deck, and just
Oh,
like
yeah.
all the kind of black cards that you can try and combo together of like life gain and dealing damage
You want to take
and drawing cards and stuff. And
Oh yeah, like you get it all on one body,
Yeah.
and it's so nuts. You want to take a stab at how much Shieldred costs?
this is how many sets ago?
This is
Too many, but
let's say 1 year ago ish. This came out a year ago, right?
Dominaria Remastered.
Dominaria United,
United.
came out
United,
about a
thank
year ago.
She also did get a reprint in All Will Be One, but that
Yeah.
was like,
Let's say it came out about a year ago.
$15.
you think it's a $15?
That is a very
card.
reasonable answer, Jake.
That's what it
yeah,
should
it is
cost.
completely wrong.
$50.
You're getting
You're
close.
closer.
Getting warmer.
71.
Yeah.
Like 70 pretty much is like the average.
I think it's like 68.
60 to 70 is
And then there's like a cooler art that I have that's more
Somewhere
money.
between 68 and 70, Mark.
yeah, somewhere
Probably between like
there,
68
yeah.
and like 75 or something
Yeah,
to be
but,
more realistic.
But yeah, no, this card is actually so busted in so
Yeah,
many
it came
formats.
out literally last year ago exactly. Yeah, 9/9/22.
There you go.
Is when the set was released.
But in standard, in modern, in pioneer, in commander, in everything.
I'm sure Legacy, though we don't talk about it. Like,
Yeah, there's anywhere you could run this card effectively, you probably do. It's absolutely nuts. It's such a big tax on your opponent to draw cards.
and they need to draw cards to find the answer to it. Like,
Man, I should put
yeah.
it back into Conrad.
It would not be a bad include. But yeah, so that was our little game. I'm glad you had some fun with it, I hope, and got to learn about
Yeah.
some of the newer cards.
I hope it wasn't terribly boring to hear me miss all of that.
No.
It's interesting to see what your thoughts were because I do tend to feel like you're pretty good at analyzing game pieces and
I think
stuff. So.
I think that was another factor of getting burned out was like to understand how all these cards are good. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that's just in general insane. I mean, if someone, taxing someone for drawing a card is obviously like always going to be like really powerful. But some of the other ones, it's like you kind of have to keep up with the meta to
Yeah.
understand when things are good and when they're not. And
Right. I can't even imagine, like, we're throwing like a 5-mana sorcery at you and being
Yeah.
like, this is better than this 5-mana mythic planeswalker. It's
Right.
like, how do you see that? Like,
Yeah.
And, I guess you can always like come in and out of the game. It's like, we started playing the game long after Magic started. Like you can always learn wherever things are at, but to like keep up with it is a lot.
Yeah.
it's very taxing.
And thinking about it's just going to keep going. Like it's not going to end. Like
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
which is cool some ways, but
It's overwhelming, but it is cool that like you are basically forever going to have a fresh game space to play in. But I think it's really balancing that with the rest of your life, your, kind of relationship with the game, but also like
with your wallet.
with your wallet, with your time, like,
With the people in your life sometimes.
yeah, like literally, like there's so much time you could spend. Like, oh, new sets coming out. They just released the full set list. Let me run through it. Let me analyze these cards 20 different ways, from commander to standard to limited play to draft. Like, it's very overwhelming sometimes. So you really, I think, have to be very selective. And it's kind of a thing that they have even said at this point, is you have to be like, not every product is for you, is kind of what they've started to say, because like, yeah, you
There's
just
so
can't-
many.
you can't
right.
do it all.
I have a lot of problems with that philosophy, but yeah, it's
I
where
agree
it
with
is.
you, man. It should be as accessible as possible and as easy to get into as possible. We like games, I think, with low entry. What is it called? Low floors
Barrier
and
to
high
entry.
ceiling. Is that what I'm
Yeah.
thinking of?
Yeah,
So
easy
low-
to play, hard to master.
easy to play, hard to master. You can get into the game by, putting a pile of cards together and it'll work. But to be really good, got to be on top of all this stuff. I think they do need to keep that floor low as best as they can. But yeah, with that, it was absolutely awesome having you on, Jake.
Thank you for having me.
Great talking
Yeah.
with you.
Thanks for coming through.
Thank you.
We'll have to have you back on again one day. Perhaps we'll do more of these silly little card games with you too.
Maybe when I'm actually like playing the game.
Hey, we get you playing the game again.
I might have more to say just as a non-player sometimes. So
That's
Yeah.
the thing is like that's the other reason why I feel like you as a different perspective than all of us have a lot of interesting points to bring up, and it's always appreciated.
thanks, man.
I agree. Yeah, we should play Commander sometime.
Let's do it.
I'll make a great deal with you if you play Commander with us sometime soon.
Oh no, it's already starting.
Watch out.
You want El Pollo
Politicking
Loco?
before the game even starts.
Oh.
I'm gonna run a smear campaign.
Yeah, we're gonna start running Ron smear campaigns before
Ron
the game
cheats.
starts.
Actually, he tried cheating last night.
Ron successfully cheated last night.
Guys, I decked myself. What do you want from me?
Oh,
Yeah, but you
more
also
than
tried to
decked
skip
yourself.
10 whole numbers.
You guys remember? You did try to do that.
I
You
was
did- that
accidentally,
on
though.
purpose. There was one other
There,
accidental.
there
It
were
was
quite a few beers and Trulies in
accidental.
it that
I'm gonna bring up one thing. There was the stacks piece on the board that said you can only play one spell per turn. How many spells did you play that turn, Ron?
I think like 2 maybe. But
Illegal play.
nobody caught it, and then 3 turns later, I realized it, and then like we were like, oh, like are we gonna go back for it? No, but that's how Commander is sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot to keep track of.
And to be fair, the player who played that stacks piece wasn't really paying attention to it either. So
I really would like, to see you guys doing like some presidential style debates, like really just get hard into the politicking.
Oh, okay.
When you're
I'll
talking
show
about your
up in
smear
suits.
campaigns, I want like Ron is bad for this country.
Ron is bad for this game.
Ron needs to be extradited.
The more Ron we have in our play group, the less
Playing we
playing
actually
we
do.
have- The less playing we actually.
My name is Cody Bone, and I approve this message.
My name is Cody Bone, and I am here to counter your spells and make sure you don't get
Cody
to play a game.
Bowen
And I take
counters
the
your
lead.
spells instead of letting you play magic.
I very rarely counter spells. I just want to also play my spells on your turn.
Whose turn is it? Not
Our
yours. Cody Bowen.
Time to cast spells.
This is fun. I like this idea very much.
Grayscale slow mo thing of him looking at your card and like bending the corner. Or something.
Cody Bowen licks paint.
Touches paint.
Touches paint. Cody touches paint Bowen. Gotta change your contact name, bro.
Well, with that smear campaign well on the way, I think we're gonna call it there. It was great having you on again, Jake. Great
Thank you
talking
again.
with you guys, and
Yeah.
just rolling through another one of these fun episodes, man.
I agree. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. And I guess I'll see you at work sometime.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. Let's do it again.
Let's do it,
Thanks,
man.
guys.
All right. Until next time. Goodbye.
Adios.
Vaya con Dios.
Bye.